And we're back. So we wanted to follow up the tier 1 video where actually this was all supposed to be, or tier 1, whatever this ends up becoming, podcast discussion, if you will.
Discussion.
Hello, John. Would you like to discuss some tears? Not the kind that come out of your eyes either. Did you like my British accent's terrible?
Tears.
I can't do any accent.
Tears and tear.
Tear, it's the same word, really.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, English language, like heel and heels.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Okay. So this was all supposed to be in one, but then, to be honest, the tier 1 stuff and discussing it, why it's used, why we use it so much in the program, or why it should be used so much in the program, ended up taking us
That's us going over the top.
over the top.
Remember that movie?
Over the top.
Arm,
Yeah. Stallone? Stallone, right?
Yeah.
That guy's on roids. Tier 2 movements. Want to talk about? You do an intro now. 2.
And we'll choose which one.
No, just add to it.
Oh,
That
all
way
right. So
both introed.
moving on to the tier 2. My guess is we didn't discuss this at all ahead of time, but these will be the slightly less redundant than the tier 1, right? A little bit more movement specific, perhaps.
Sure.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. So just in case you guys can't read this, Olympic lifts, high skill gymnastics, and monostructural weaknesses, aka cardio weaknesses. That's strictly for competitors. That's why it's in parentheses. If I have we didn't even talk about this in the first video, or the first discussion. If I have a athlete that can't swim, for instance, which by the way, I can't tell you how many of the games athletes that I've coached into the water.
Can't swim.
Can't swim. Can't run. A lot of guys can't. A lot of athletes can't run. Very few can't row, though.
Isn't that kind of a contradiction of statements?
What?
A lot of athletes can't run.
You don't have to be ticky tacky.
I'm not.
You know, you just could let it go, bro.
Oh, my bad. Cut that out,
Anyway,
bruh.
Bruh. In those times, right? If I have a competitive athlete,
Face like this.
somebody that wants to, you just moved the board.
Sorry.
Oh, glare's gone. Just kidding. If you have an athlete that wants to compete and they know they're going to be running, they got to get good at running. Blah, blah, blah. And they could do that often because it doesn't do any damage to the central nervous system, right?
Sorry, I just yawned.
Oh, talking about competitors. John wants to be done as quickly as possible. So tier 2, that brings us to tier 2, right? We didn't really, this is pretty easy because tier 1, we don't have to necessarily define the movements because they're pretty obvious, Olympic lifts and high skill gymnastics. And we get to tier 2 and we're talking about slow lifts. We're talking about low skill gymnastics. This would be like pull-ups, right? Is it a skill? Is the kipping pull-up a skill? Yes, but it's not as hard to develop as, say, handstand walking or something along those lines. And then high skill cardio or weighted movements, and I'll kind of define that when we get there. But you're the slow lift guy, right? So how often should we be doing slow lifts, or why?
Why or how often?
Well, why first? Then.
So we talked about the tiered lifts, the Olympic weightliftings, and the gymnastics, and how that translates. I would say the squat and the deadlift, as far as strength builders, a press for the upper body. I mean, you can make a solid argument that those are also tier 1.
But they're not a skill, right?
Right.
They don't take as much skill to perform.
Right. So what was the initial question? Why?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, why?
Sorry.
Or why are they on the tier 2?
Tier 2, because they're extremely important, and building strength through your squat and or your deadlift is just going to make, it's not a skill, but it's not only going to make you stronger, just raw strength in terms of like the force and work that your muscles are capable of doing, but also going to increase, probably more importantly, the durability and efficacy of your central nervous system. thus being the slow lifts.
Let me define something. We kind of bass backwards this one.
Okay.
Let me define something. So tier 1, when I say tier 1, I mean we're doing these 3 to 4 times a week. Wow, it's hard to write like this. Jeez, that's the worst writing ever. Okay? When I say tier 2, I mean each one of these movements specifically, we're doing them at least 1 time a week. Okay? Let me put a 2 there. 1 to 2 times a week. Right? So, and I'll let John continue. But when I say slow lifts or tier 2, 1 to 2 times a week, that means we're squatting once or twice a week. Right? Absolutely once or twice a week. We're pulling, whether it be deadlift or
power clean,
power clean, whatever. We're doing that 1 to 2 times a week, generally 1 time a week. We're pressing once a week. We're something along those lines. Now, go ahead.
So,
were you done?
No, I wasn't done. So the dirt is. So when people talk about strength, there's a common misconception. People think about like big muscles and size, right? When
you mean like those?
Yeah. Mm. But the slow lifts, the squat, the deadlift, the press, or is building that contractile force in your muscles. But a big part of that force and how much work those muscles are able to do has to do with your central nervous system. So it's not a skill, but it is more than just brute strength. So I guess the best analogy I always use is, right, so if your muscles are the speakers, right, the amplifier and the wiring running to those speakers, the amp and the wiring, that's your nervous system. And obviously you can get a lot of loud noise out of some relatively small quality speakers with excellent wiring and an excellent amplifier.
That's really good.
Why is that so hard to spit out?
That's a really good metaphor.
Right. So, and that, like Louis Simmons, Westside Barbell says,
Who's that?
Who's that guy? Big isn't strong. Strong is strong. Meaning, a lot of those guys, a lot of guys walking around with a whole bunch of big muscle aren't necessarily capable of moving the most or even that much weight. Which in our sport is huge, right? Because excess weight is really just a liability. You have to oxygenate it. You got to carry it around, right? So you want to get as much strength and power out of the least amount of total muscle mass as possible, which turns out, when you chase it as a sport, is also just a healthier, more...
You're saying big muscles
I'm talking about wellness. I'm saying...
Aren't that healthy?
No, they're not.
They don't fit in shirts.
They cause lots of complications, and they're really hard on your heart.
And you have to do steroids generally to get them.
So for all you bros out there thinking about like, hey man, how do I get those gains? I would suggest focusing on getting stronger, not necessarily bigger, and that those two are not synonymous.
Amen, brother. Yeah, so the tier 2 movements, again, you're going to see 1 to 2 times a week. Just kind of go back and define that. Slow lifts being squat, dead, press, things along those lines. You can also add into that category, you can add upright row, any of those kind of things, or bent over row. You can add simple things like weighted pull-ups, etc., right? Anything that's weighted and is there to build strength, hypertrophy, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Low skill gymnastics, again, we go back to things like pull-ups, right? You're going to see those once a week. Why? Because we have to get enough volume of those to be good at them. And also just kind of in the parameters of the sport, you're going to see those movements quite a bit. One thing I should have kind of, along with the low skill gymnastics, I didn't write it on the board, is accessories, right? So these two accessories, if I had written it there, kind of harken back up to here. So the push press, the, what else? Oh, Jesus. Accessory lifts, right, for the Olympic lifts. Push press is always the first one that comes to mind.
I think bench press is an excellent accessory. Maybe we'll add that into the next cycle.
Well, we did just do a pressing cycle. Though that would go under the slow lifts, right? But these are basically things that are going to add to these, right? And you're going to see these 1 to 2 times a week for sure. Toe to bar would be a low skill gymnastic. knee to elbow, whatever, what?
No, I got it. I was just seeing how many tiers you went with.
Three tiers, right? So, like I said, toe to bar, pull up, etc. And then I should have added in there accessory lifts, push press, things along those lines. And then last but not least is high skill cardio or weighted movements. So this is kind of a little bit of a nebulous category, but for me, these things are like thrusters, all right? Thrusters a little bit more skillful, like it's something we see quite a bit in the sport. A wall ball, right? Wall ball is sort of a high skill weighted movement, right? A high skill cardio movement would be like I hate to say this, but like a box jump, right? It's something that you have to practice a little bit to be decent at, right? And then the sort of other side of that would be something like a burpee, which is a no skill, right? It's just something you got to do a lot,
right?
If that makes sense, right? So these are going to make up the bulk of our metabolic conditioning, right? These are going to, and to a certain extent, something like a hang power clean, right, turns into this high skill weighted movement, right? Because it's something that we need to progress as far as strength goes and as far as power output goes and as far as pulling, etc. But it's something that when we add that into a conditioning workout, right, it becomes a cardio thing as well. But it's a high skill cardio thing, right? It's something that you know you're going to see in the open or something like that, right? And there's a technique for bouncing it off your legs, right, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you have to practice to be good at, but it's not something that we need to. It's something we should see often, right? On a basis where we see it once a week or we see it once every 2 weeks, something along those lines. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, and then we can do tier 1 and tier 3 together. Tier 3 would be low skill weighted movements, which for me it's like the kettlebell swing. All right. I don't know. Can you think of anything else? Things like walking lunges.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a potentially endless list that fits.
Right. Yeah. We're not going to list it out. We're not going to talk about it. But this is just so you guys. Oh, and this you'll see once a month. I don't know how to. I'm not even going to write it. These you'll see once every couple weeks, once a month, something like that. Something that we need to do, but it's not a big deal. It's not something we have to practice a lot. Now, here's kind of a weird one. I say monostructural cardio.
Oh, excuse me.
So with monostructural cardio, I'm talking about running, I'm talking about rowing, I'm talking about any of those things, right? So these are tier 3 movements, but you'll see these more often because there's only so much weighted movement you can put in conditioning, right? Because at some point we kind of get off and I don't want to go into a big deal about Prolepin's table or anything like that, but at some point there's only so much repeat squat, only so much repeat pull, only so much repeat hanging that we can do, right? And we want for a cardio piece to have, or for a metabolic conditioning piece to have full effect, to keep the heart rate elevated, to be at whatever maximum power output for an extended period of time, then we need to put those pieces in. But the question is, and the reason they're tier 3 is because they don't really need to be practiced. So if we don't see something like that for a while, it's not going to get worse, right? It's not like an Olympic lift. If we dropped Olympic lifting out for 3 weeks, then the person's going to feel like an idiot when they touch the barbell for the first time. If we drop running out for 3 weeks, everybody's going to be psyched, right? Oh, we don't have to run this week. This is awesome. Yeah. We haven't run in a couple weeks. Yay, right? If we drop kettlebell swing out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you're not going to get any worse at it necessarily.
You might feel like you have, but you haven't.
Right. You haven't gotten weaker. Your aerobic capacity hasn't gotten worse, etc.
Yep.
Right. So the monostructural cardio, you're gonna see a little bit more often than a low skilled weighted movement, but you don't necessarily have to. This is more like eat your vegetables. eat your vegetables explanation in that you have to see the tier 1 movements 3 or 4 times a week.
Yep.
Right? You have to see to continue to progress, continue to, on whatever level we're talking about, just making our athletes healthier, whatever. You have to see these 1 to 2 times a week. Tier 3, not necessarily. Right?
Right.
Anything else you want to say?
Yep.
First video, 45 minutes? Go ahead.
Ready for a little outro, if you're ready.
Oh, I could outro.
Well, I want the final word on this one.
Oh, go. I'm done.
Okay. So that being said,
But hold on. If anybody wants this in more detail, if you actually want us to lay out the lifts, send us a message, an email, something like that.
Right.
Because we'll do it. I mean,
we'll do it. Open book, complete transparency. That being said, that's even a better segue into what I was about to say, which is this. If you're still watching this video by now and you're an affiliate owner, I have a suggestion. If you don't want to hear the suggestion, you can just turn it off now, because it's going to be a suggestion from John, right? This is just I think the main value in here is just a little glimpse to you guys into how much time and effort we put into the programming and the thought that goes behind it. And I'm guaranteeing you, for you to not that you can't reproduce the same thing. None of this stuff is rocket science, obviously. There's some science to it, but none of it is outside of your guys' grasp or your probably your current state of knowledge. And we probably didn't say anything you didn't already know. So we know you can apply these same principles, but to do it effectively and to do it with the same level and attention to detail that we do it, it's just how long it takes to bake that cake is 20 to 40 hours a month, period. So we can give you that time back and do whatever you want with that time. But I bet you can get a lot more value out of what you're paying us for that 20 to 40 hours back in your pocket, back in your clock, back in your watch.
Back in your life.
Back in your life. Back in your life.
Back to the future.
So keep watching the videos by all means if you want to better understand the program. But even the time you spent watching this video, I think could have been, if you really thought about it.
Are you just saying that they shouldn't have watched the video?
No, I'm saying that time probably could have been better spent.
Oh my God, that's not good.
That is really good.
We've wasted our time because you wasted your. Jesus, it's cyclical. My head's gonna explode. Hey, if you guys have questions,
we wasted because you.
If you have anything you want us to talk about, anything you want us to address.
Yeah, that being said, we love talking about it. We don't mind talking about it. You can email us or send us a message, and we'll send you the whole template and how we come up with it, and blah 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 blah. I love it. Not knocking it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're trying to do podcasty thing, film content, blah blah blah, and we need your suggestions. Look at that.
That'd be good.
Straight
If there's something else you want us to address, we would be happy to.
Look at that. And please make the questions about the games and competition because John loves that stuff.
I feel like we make it sound like I hate it. I don't hate it. I'm just kind of.
Who won the games this year?
The dudes. Who won the guys?
It's still. It's not. That's not even good. That's not funny because.
Who came in second? I don't know.
Really? No, almost won.
Oh yeah. Good job, Noah.
Good job, Noah.
That is impressive. Seriously.
No, I know. He was like close. Yeah. I mean, then Fraser just put his foot down. Amanda, can you turn the camera off?